Hello, I'm Frances, and we have had a huge amount of rain for the past week here in the Blue Mountains after a very hot day over 35 degrees Celsius. It's now mid-January and we've had rain non-stop for the past week. So I just went outside and rescued some of my roses from the rain. They've been in the rain all week. The problem is I run out of vases, so they're so pretty. This is Papa Meland. It smells beautifully fragrant, the red one. And this is Parole, beautifully fragrant. I only buy fragrant roses. And this is the David Austin called Abraham Darby. And up the back, I've got Grandma's Rose. I just don't have enough vases, so I need to go on eBay sometime and get some more. And then up the back is a Earth Angel. So I just went out in the rain, and these things on my windows are to tell the birds, the beautiful, magnificent birds, Australian birds we have here. Sorry about my camera skills again, always apologies. So flying around the bush here, especially in summer, more in summer and a little bit of spring, but not in winter. We don't get so many crimson rosellas and king parrots and well, they're the main ones that fly into the window, and brown doves. Anyway, I've had 2 call-outs at Christmas to wires because both times they flew into my window. 2 birds. One is in the freezer for taxidermy one day, and yeah, the other one went to a vet, so hopefully recovered, but I will not risk that again. So I either close the curtains to stop. They think that they can just fly straight through. Anyway, so I put paper, white or tape up. Yeah, so my beautiful roses today, gorgeously fragrant, and so much rain around here. Midsummer, jumpers on. Actually in spring, because I've only had this house for a year, and so we were planting. Well, my son particularly wanted to plant a lot of fruit trees, so we planted bare root trees in winter. We've got plums, 2 plums down there, an apricot, trivet, and Moore Park. So we've got 2 Lapin cherries, dwarf, and other cherries that I grew from seed. Amazingly, they just popped up, beautiful Lapin cherries. Well, I haven't tasted them, but they came from beautiful fruit, the best ones. And what else have I got? Apples, quite a few varieties of apples. So we planted all them in the winter. So they are hopefully benefiting from all this rain, but it's a bit too much. It just means I don't have to water every day, which I did. We had a particularly hot week before this rain, and it's a bit boring watering everything, but obviously that you have to do that. And now they're very well watered in, so a lot of plants that I've planted, or that my son helped a lot with planting, they're well watered in now. I've got a stone pine out there, like a Roman. In Rome, you see the umbrella pines in many parts of Italy. I just love them. So, yeah, I love having this property to grow fruit trees, roses. Well, the problem is in summer, it's just all green, and there's not so many flowers actually. There's hardly any flowers in summer. So that's why I've gone a bit rose crazy. Now I need to get more vases or just leave them on the bush, but they do say to deadhead them. So they just look gorgeous. And I went to in Sydney, I went to a place, it's in Galston. It's called Green E Roses, a German couple. Oops, sorry, my hand's getting a bit tired. I do not have tripods, I have nothing. So let me just hold it with my other hand somehow. Yeah, anyway, I'll just keep this one up. So Green E Roses is run by a German couple, Klaus and Brigitte, and they're just so fun to talk to and entertaining, and they've been there for 38 years. So just this huge, vast supply of roses of many, many varieties, standard roses, which means they're on like at least 1 metre high on a root standing up, and then they have, I don't like to bend over to those other hybrid tea roses, and then they have climbing roses, ramblers, all sorts. So I've been on this huge learning curve about roses the past only a few months really. I went to a garden near where I live, and she's like gives talks about heritage roses and the old varieties. So I went to her garden and smelt. That's the thing with me. Everyone is so different. One of the ladies down the road, she has 100 roses, different varieties. She's collected them over years, and she's not bothered about scent or colour. Well, I don't know. She likes stripes, but she loves names, and that was her job, cataloguing or something in medical data. So she has A to Z, every letter of the alphabet, and the name of a rose. Whereas me, I couldn't really care less about the name of the rose. I just care about the scent and the colour. And the lady at Bunnings, she grows roses, but she only bought roses if they were named after Catholic saints. So if you're a rose collector, a rose grower, please tell me what your quirky collection is created, how it's created, because I just think that's fascinating. I would never buy a rose because of the name, I don't think. I would just go by the scent, but that's just me. Anyway, everyone is different. But even at Green E Roses, which they have probably the biggest supply that I know of in Sydney, Swains is closed. They used to be the main supplier. We went to Swains, which is right down the road in Dural, Kenthurst, Glenhaven area, and yeah, it's closed down after decades, literally decades. And they supply to Bunnings now, so you can buy roses. We bought one called Veterans Rose from Bunnings. It's beautiful, but no fragrance. And that's the benefit of going to these rose places when it's the middle of summer. You can smell them and see the actual flowers, whereas if you buy them bare root in winter, you can't smell anything. Obviously, sorry to state Captain Obvious. Yeah, and I have this most enormous list somewhere with all the names of all the roses I want to buy, because I've smelt them in other people's collections or something. One called Jude the Obscure, and I listen to a lot of podcasts. Can't think of all the names, so many names. Queen of Sweden is another David Austin rose that's coming to Australia next autumn, so I'll get one of them. Yeah, it's tricky to know where to plant them all, because you want to walk past and smell them at sort of nose level, not have to bend over down to the ground. And then you want to save the best spots for the best ones that you like the most. So these are the tricky, difficult decisions we have to make. And actually, I have a flagpole in my garden. I'll show you if I can. It's behind that cypress pine. A French lady said it reminded her of Provence. Anyway, I could put a flag there, but I don't have any flags. And there's this whole crackdown in Australia about speech, freedom of speech. Yes, what do we say about this? Actually, most of my followers, I have 500 followers on this YouTube channel. Thank you very much for following me. Sorry, it's not even in focus. Oh, terrible. Yeah, and after I posted videos about, well, they were shorts. No one watches my videos so far, and even this one will get hardly any views, but sometimes I just feel like saying things. So, after October 11th, I was at the first rally at Hyde Park. Yes, and I took videos there. And one of them was of Jewish speakers at that rally who supported the people of Palestine, and I was there supporting them. And now the government is banning freedom of speech, so who knows what we can say anymore. Am I allowed to hang a flag of Palestine on that flagpole if I want to? What can I say right here, right now, and not end up in prison and be arrested? I have so much to say about this. I studied journalism at Bathurst when I was, whenever, 20-ish. 1993 I graduated, and I actually did an internship at The Australian when it was good in Parliament House with really good journalists, Lenore Taylor, and she's now editor of The Guardian, and Laura Tingle, George Megalogenis, and other guys who's still there. Cameron, oh dear, he's quite a Zionist, so amazing. Well, so, Cameron Stewart's his name. Interesting to see what happens to people. Yeah, so I studied journalism, and then I worked, in Pardew TV in Alice Springs, and then I went to ABC TV in Sydney, and I saw what happened when John Howard came into government. I was at the ABC then in Gore Hill. And there were all these cutbacks, and people were protesting, union meetings. It was the most horrible environment to be in, and I was like early 20s. So, and I didn't really want my job because I just wanted to travel. So I quit, and I went to Italy actually, Assisi, and worked there. But yeah, I saw what John Howard and his government did to the ABC, and because my father was a history teacher, and my mother, but mainly my father, he was very educated about history, so he knew the history of Palestine, and he educated me, and he would often watch the ABC religiously, basically, every day, all day, like, whenever he would sleep with the ABC radio on and all that, and watch every night ABC News. So he would know the Zionist takeover of the ABC back then. And it's been proven now since the Antoinette Lattouf case. Even I'm biting my tongue right now because, law is coming into effect next week to stop us saying the truth of our life experience. I grew up in Randwick. I feel so strongly about this. My parents were teachers at Randwick Boys High. We grew up in Randwick when there were no Zionists. And the school up the road that's now Emmanuel School was the Catholic convent. We used to go there as kids, up Stephen Street. And Moriah College, which is the Zionist school, where I've actually taught, so I know inside of it. That was the hospital. And under Bob Carr's government, it became, probably thanks to the then Treasurer, the wheelings and dealings of Lowy and Triguboff, it became Moriah College. So, what do I say next without ending up in prison? My father's best friend, who often came to talk to him, and when I was caring for my father, who had Alzheimer's and prostate cancer before he died, my father's best friend was the academic vice-chancellor of the University of New South Wales in Randwick. We were friends with them, that family, since I was in primary school at Randwick Public School, which was hugely multicultural. We had a wave of Vietnam refugees who I became very close to, now doctors and everything. Every nationality, a lot of Greeks in Randwick. Anyway, then our neighbours moved in. They were from South Africa, the Waldsteins, Ernie Waldstein and his wife Diana. And actually Elizabeth Arnell, she was a lovely girl, more English, and her dad was all part of that group at the University of New South Wales. So I would look after my dad and hear all these stories for hours about how at the University of New South Wales, a fellow called Fred Hilmer, he was from Fairfax. He was an economic rationalist who did all the cutbacks, or some of them, at Fairfax. The other fellow, Darren Goodsir, ended up at University of New South Wales too. And Mark Scott, well, they're all in the same group. Fred Hilmer was Mark Scott's mentor. Mark Scott was at Fairfax under Fred Hilmer. Darren Goodsir was at the Sydney Morning Herald, the editor who got rid of thousands of journalists, sub-editors, you name it. He was the guy. I met him surprisingly at a dinner party one day. Yeah, wow, good on you, mate. Anyway, and then he ended up at Sydney Uni, where Mark Scott also was. After the education department, of course, where Mark Scott also was. He just followed him around. Anyway, hi Darren, if you're listening. Also taught his daughter one day. I said, oh, that's an unusual surname. Is your father at the Sydney Morning Herald? Yes, that's my dad. So, yeah, I read out a lot of unusual, well, familiar names at some schools, particularly King Copple Rose Bay. Okay, this girl, that's her name I recognise, of some MP. Anyway, I will not talk about that. What I would like to talk about is the takeover of the University of New South Wales and the interconnectedness in the eastern suburbs of Sydney of these people who often came from South Africa. I knew a woman, she's a doctor, from South Africa. She grew up under apartheid. She had to catch the bus for coloured people because her skin was not quite white. So imagine her joy when she finally got away from South Africa and apartheid. She moved to Rose Bay. Guess who followed? After Mandela came into power, lots and lots of white South African, am I allowed to say their religion or their, anyway, it's a matter of fact. There's a lot of Jewish South Africans in Rose Bay who came here to leave South Africa at the time when a black fellow became the president. So that was joy of joys for her. So we saw that takeover of the eastern suburbs. My sons played soccer for ESPA, Eastern Suburbs Football Association. I sat with the fathers in the crowd. Stephen Lowy, the Lowy family were the head of the Football Federation of Australia. I sat behind him one day at Valentine Park. Stephen Lowy. Geez, I would have liked to eat his sandwiches. They were like beautiful Hungarian type rye bread. And I remember that the ribbon was tied up with a red and white stripy ribbon, these sandwiches. And later on when they played with Hakoah, it was all Maccabi Hakoah, this whole thing. It was a very closed club. My son played against his son. You know, all the names were on the back of their shirts, and I would sit there Googling these names. Whoever was on the board of Westfield or whatever, they were sort of, their kids were playing together on the football field. So it had very little to do with skill, and there are very few football teams in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. Hakoah is the main one, but it was not based on talent. It's just a fact. Am I allowed to say facts, or do I end up in prison? And I remember one boy, because these are obviously wealthy families, and one boy went to Rose Bay Secondary College, which is a state's high school, public high school. But this father was desperate for his son to be in the in group. Obviously huge connections and business and money. So much money. And houses, everything. And yeah, I just thought, I think I probably said to him, why would you want him to go there? He's better off at a multicultural school. Like, public schools in Sydney are wonderful, just educationally based on who goes to them, which is people from every different country in the world, every culture. You educate a child by learning tolerance for other people. But no, he wanted his son, they were South African, he wanted his son to go to the Zionist school where he would learn or have connections. They all learn Hebrew and read the Torah and all that. How do I know? From personal experience. Am I allowed to tell the truth now, or will I end up in prison? When I used to walk across Queen's Park to that school to teach there as a casual teacher, I used to wear walking shoes, and one day this arrogant little girl looked at my shoes as if to say, didn't approve of my shoes. Little princess, ESPs they're called, Eastern Suburbs Princess. Anyway, plenty of them around. So you'd have to get to the school at 8 a.m. I would go to the prayer room where they all had to pray and wear their white, well, I don't know all the names for it, but that's why I went there, to educate myself. I'm a bit of a sociologist, anthropologist. I like to see and educate myself about things. They were reading these books backwards, the Torah, you know, and all this food. And on a Friday they would get challah, spelt Challah, this special bread. And our soccer coach used to get so annoyed because every Friday they couldn't train on a Friday evening, which is when he wanted everyone to train, but No, they had their special, Friday thing. So, that's my personal experience. Do I end up in prison for saying that? Because I'm just horrified that we can't say the truth. We can't speak about our personal opinions, our freedom of expression. And also, my grandparents fought for this country. They fought for even one... Okay, so on my father's side, my grandfather was at Gallipoli. He was in the ambulance corps. He saw everything. We grew up with the consequences of trauma. I'm a psychotherapist. I've studied trauma. What have we witnessed for the past 2 or 3 years in Gaza? On our screens, what have we seen? And my other grandfather, my mother's father, was in London, or Sussex, 1945. He was a lieutenant colonel. I have a letter from Churchill to him to thank him for his services in fighting fascism, Hitler. What for? All the sacrifices, all the experiences they had to help particularly Jewish people. I don't know what to say. I really don't. My friends are Palestinian. Their land was stolen from them in Jerusalem and Bethlehem, made into a park. The truth will exist. You can lock everyone up, but it doesn't change the truth. And I will not be silenced. How dare they try to silence us with their money by buying the politicians in the Labour Party, the Liberal Party, and most other parties except a few rare Greens. What's his name? David? I forget the footballer's name. Wonderful guy in Canberra. And David Shoebridge, obviously, is the Greens senator, and Kate Fairman. Other Greens are standing up for the truth, standing up for people's human rights. So I didn't know I was going to talk about this today, but I wanted to say something. And the bill will go through next week. What is it today? Saturday. I just don't agree with silencing people for speaking the truth, especially after the genocide that we witnessed. I mean, I don't know, people don't try to hide these words so that they can get their videos out or whatever. Just say it as it is, really. They say words like schmurder to get around the algorithm or whatever on TikTok. I went through my Facebook. I don't often use Facebook, and because it was over 5 years ago when he first came in, he was getting elected the first time, and I wrote on Facebook that he's a megalomaniac. And my old English teacher actually said, what are you talking about? How can you judge people? Hello, 2025. Do you think he might be a megalomaniac and more? Anyway, here we are. I won't talk about current events because they will not be current when other people are watching this, but at the moment it's about Greenland, Iran, Venezuela. Like, the guy's just a megalomaniac and a pedophile and a rapist and many other things. People are talking about Shmurda and him, so yeah, maybe it's time to stop being distracted by all these other conflicts that they're trying to distract us with. Anyone who goes to war or allows their son or daughter to go to war to fight for these megalomaniacs is not very intelligent. Prison is a better place compared to that. So I'll show you my beautiful roses. Thank you for listening. And let's hope we can have freedom of speech in this country and in the world.